If a story isn't substantial enough for its own analysis, it gets put aside and I move on to the next story. I have no idea why these thumbnails are moving in an arc. Like, it just kind of happened. I didn't make them do that. This is also why this is the only time in the entire series that we hear Takagi use honorifics for Nishikata. Raimation pointed out that Takagi calls him Nishikata-kun in First Day of School as well. Accidentally says her name without an honorific. It's a huge step forward and it really is terrific. If there are more moments like this, I will write a fanfic. Accidentally says her name without an honorific. As fun as this little jig was to ad-lib and sort of animate, it does bring the analysis to a screeching halt and probably should have been left to the outtakes. Takagi can also be childish at times, which we will see in Bicycle, and Nishikata will explicitly think to himself in Treasure Hunting. He explicitly thinks this to himself in Bicycle as well. Speaking of Bicycle, Bicycle is probably a video that should have been put into a lightning analysis. I had so little to say about the story that I wound up spending a bulk of the video talking about myself. Nishikata's fantasy of being a stoic grown-up while continuing to exploit his weaknesses. The practice of defining words that I use in my analysis is by far the most pretentious thing I have ever done, and I am glad that it backfired on me. This question cannot be easily dodged, like the question in New School Year, and it forces Nishikata to once again consider that Takagi has a crush on someone. Notice he looks nervous until he decides that this is a trap, after which he looks more contemplative. Ironically, in the video where I started defining words, I use a word wrong. Contemplative is a better word for prolonged thought. Nishikata's expression in this story could be better described as focused or determined or even just less nervous. He goes out of his way to meet her in counting steps because he wants to defeat her. It's just called steps in the anime. Guess I've given away how I read the manga. Maturity really has nothing to do with your taste in drinks or how you pretend to act. Maturity is about understanding stakes and acting appropriately, about putting others above yourself if their needs are greater, about accepting accountability for your mistakes, and about accepting short-term consequences for long-term benefits. By the end of the season, Nishikata will show real, genuine maturity, and it will be celebrated as the best moment in the season, if not the entire show. Yeah, I have nothing wrong with this. It's another thing I wrote that I really like. Oh, look at that, I'm gushing again. With Takagi and Nishikata, on the other hand, things are far more ambiguous. That is not how you spell ambiguous. This is what I meant about the practice backfiring, and I am glad it did, because it was just kind of corny and very pretentious. The story would not work nearly as well if Takagi were more like Hojo or if Nishikata were more like Nakai. Again, I don't know why I didn't elaborate on this. It's one thing to propose speculation, but I really should have seen that speculation through. For the record, if Takagi were more like Hojo, she wouldn't flirt or drop nearly as many hints, and if Nishikata were more like Nakai, he would not be as bothered about being teased and probably wouldn't have those reactions that Takagi loves so much. So when I tell you that the first story in today's video, Happy Birthday, is an anime original story that takes place in episode 5 from
10 minutes and 10 seconds.
Will people understand that this time does not take that title card into account, so the Netflix version actually starts at
10 minutes and 30 seconds.
Stuffing up the times during voice recording really took the wind out of my rant here. Truth is, I really love Happy Birthday. It's just that the reasons I have for enjoying the story can be explained in a very short amount of time. I feel like I need to explain the too short qualifier for videos going into lightning analysis. Ultimately, the main priority of any analysis video is to educate and entertain. Length should not be a problem so long as the video is filled with good analysis. But over the last couple of years, I've sort of created this standard for making videos that are 6 to 7 minutes long, and there is this sense of pressure to uphold that standard. So if a video is not going to meet that standard, it gets put into a lightning analysis so that it can meet that standard. Today's topic for analysis is date. I usually have a bit more of a build-up before I name drop the story, but given that the points I had to make about date were so specific to date, I kinda had to drop it right at the very beginning. And that is it for this analysis. A short one, I know, but I can assure you that I will more than make up for it with the next analysis. See what I mean about a sense of pressure for videos to be 6 to 7 minutes long? The only reason date wasn't put into a lightning video is because once we had done camping trip, I did not want to go back. Speaking of camping trip, however, the beginning of this episode seems determined to reassure us that no matter what adversity our main duo face, their relationship is inevitable. You can probably tell I was going to make an Avengers Endgame reference here, but I decided I didn't want to date this analysis with memes like I did with the seating arrangement video. Wardrobe door but loses balance and falls over, banging his... Their post goes into detail about how this episode is packed to the gills with overused cliches and how the episode as a whole is a blemish on the rest of the series. In writing the script for my mistakes video, I had to double check that packed to the gills was an actual saying. And turns out it is. How come everyone finishes the dance holding someone else's hand, except for Nishikata and Takagi? Except for those two in the background. Who knows, maybe they hesitated as well. The scene with Kimura serves as a framing device, and the B-plot serves to waste everyone's time. So as far as I can tell, everyone took this for the joke it was meant to be, but for people who didn't see it as a joke and decided to keep quiet, I don't think the B-plot is a waste of time, I just don't think it's as good as the A-plot. He is short-sighted and materialistic, which isn't me trying to put him down. He can't be any older than 14 in this scene, and that's just how young teenagers are. According to manga chapter 118, he is 13 throughout most of his second year of middle school, and turns 14 when he reaches his third year. Big thanks to Orion Tran, and a huge welcome to Quincy Chamberlain, my new patron. Sorry, Quincy Chamberlain. I may object to the framing of some of the shots. I had a few people comment on this video that they either didn't notice shots like these or that it didn't bother them. As someone who heavily studies and inherently endorses the show, I feel like I need to call it out when it delves into these sketchy practices. So far, the show has built a pretty solid reputation for being able to entertain without resorting to fan service. So when it does resort to fan service, with its underage characters, I'm gonna call him out on it. Nishikata was quickly trying to clean so that he could get away from Takagi in order to prevent rumors. Misfortune stemmed from Nishikata's fear of how other people will perceive his relationship with Takagi, but we won't see that again. I put one of those card things in the video, but just in case you didn't see it, I stole this joke from Cinema Wins. When Takagi opens the box and the cotton springs out, she is overwhelmed with an intense sense of joy. This could be due to the inherently nostalgic nature of a Jack-in-the-Box style prank. It isn't a huge deal, but the line about the Jack-in-the-Box being inherently nostalgic is a remnant of a previous version of the script where that aspect was more thoroughly explored. At the end of the day, it was considered unnecessary and most of it was cut except for this line, which also probably should have been cut. This story is also, in fact, a story about Takagi's feeling for Nishikata being reaffirmed. One of the big regrets with the worries analysis is that I did not differentiate the conflict Takagi was facing with the conflict she was facing in Camping Trip. Camping Trip was about accepting obstacles that were out of her control, whereas Worries is about her confronting obstacles that are within her control but are very hard to overcome. Usually his rivalry with Takagi takes center stage, and everything hinges on winning and losing. This aspect of Nishikata's character is consistently explored and challenged in today's stories for analysis. I get a little lazy here and just use the image I had already made for the thumbnail. Honestly, I should have redone it with pictures of Nishikata instead. Takagi's lack of concern over Yukari's interference shows us that she doesn't mind how other people perceive her relationship with Nishikata. This attitude is reflected in the first season's OP song, Iwanai Kedo Ne. This moment should be all the proof you need that I do not extensively plan out these analysis videos. If I had known that treasure hunting would end the way it did, I would not have bothered mentioning Iwanai Kedo Ne in this video. Now, the thing is, this is probably a mistake that's never going to get fixed. Something about doing these videos week by week really fits in well with my current workload. So unfortunately, moments like this will probably keep happening. This may just be me misreading the manga, but in chapters like The Scoop and Hide and Seek, I figured that Hojo was genuinely mature. Yeah, it is just you misreading the manga. As Rymation pointed out, there are clear signs in the manga that Hojo's maturity is a front. This is even clear in some of the panels that I put into the video. She seemingly realizes that he must have been carrying that coffee around just so that he could give it to her, and she backs off a little, explains that the coffee tastes better this way, and thanks him. An alternate take is that Hamagushi's apology was the first sign of authenticity he had shown since he asked to take a break. I said back in Camping Trip that Hojo appreciates authenticity, so now that Hamaguchi is being authentic, she can be authentic right back. I have a lot to say about this moment, the reasons behind why it's happening and the potential consequences, but I'm afraid I'll be saving that discussion for the next analysis where I can properly explain myself. But for now, I will say that it might have some negative implications for the climax of the entire season. I've gone on record as saying that I did not expect this cliffhanger to garner so much attention. That is a failing on my part. I absolutely should have known that people would be interested by a cliffhanger like that, and I will be aware of that going forward. Don't worry, this doesn't mean I'm going to end every analysis with a cliffhanger. Or does it? Treasure hunting was a bit of a strange analysis. I began writing the script thinking it was going to be one thing and it turned into something completely different, and there are some points in the video where you can probably tell that that is the case. I'm a bit of a traditionalist when it comes to microtransactions. A lot of people pointed out how weird it was that I used microtransactions to make my point. I still stand by the fact that I needed some kind of analogy, but maybe AAA monetization wasn't the best analogy out there. Cynical monetization cannot be justified by comparing it to more cynical monetization any more than a punch to the stomach can be justified by comparing it to a punch in the face. Like, you've still punched me in the stomach. The hell is wrong with you? This was a cheap and failed attempt at H-Bomber Guy-like humour, and it really should have just been cut. A big welcome to Lars Epson, who has joined Orion Tran and Quincy Chamberlain as a patron. Sorry, Lars Espen. However, after her eager reaction to receiving the gift and admitting that it made her very happy, Nishikata caves and spills the beans, but why? I used the term spill the beans twice in one video, and I only used it accurately once. She refers to him the same way she did in Valentine's Day, as someone who gets teased a lot, possibly associating the inherently romantic event of Valentine's Day to Nishikata's potential invitation to make her desires clear. An alternate take is that she understands that someone who gets teased a lot is a convenient way to implicitly reference Nishikata that he will immediately understand. A big welcome to Data52, who has become a patron. Sorry, Data50. Wait, you mean I got that one right? Firstly, we'd have to talk about how much more upset Takagi looks in this shot compared to the beginning of Worries. A different and more accurate take on this is that it's meant to be a direct reference to Worries. In Worries, Takagi's main concern was that the fight she had wasn't worth it. So it makes sense that in Promises, when Nishikata fails to ask her, she will once again be thinking about whether the fight was worth it. I still stand by everything I said about the diegetic versus non-diegetic stuff though. She barely maintains her composure as she loads up Nishikata's arms with drinks. A nice touch to remember is that giving the winner a drink has been a staple of the show, just as much as the loser does what the winner says consequence. Takagi giving Nishikata all these cans is her way of saying that he has finally won, and done so in such a huge way that he is rewarded 4 times what he would normally be. So I've decided to end this video with more gushing. A lot of people in the comments seemingly didn't pick up on Takagi giving Nishikata drinks, representing the win state of many of their competitions. Many people explicitly told me that I'd pointed out a detail about this show that they had not noticed on their own. Ultimately, that is the point of this entire series, so I am overjoyed that I was able to pull that off. And those are all the mistakes that I was able to pick up on in my own analysis series. I'd like to thank my patrons, Orion Tran, Quincy Chamberlain, Lars Espen, Data52 and Jaman5. If you would like to join these wonderful people or the fine folks on the Discord server, you can do so via links in the description. Outtakes are available on my Patreon for free and on the Discord server. Thank you all very much for watching, and I will see you next time.